Hi from me, Lauren Jaffe, and welcome to another episode of Derech Erezt. Self-care is so essential, particularly when it so often falls to the side in our fast-paced society. Today we learn more about this important topic with Yakira Mishan and the Counselling Hub. But first, Rabbi Ari Shishler tells us why self-care is so important.
Undoubtedly, one of the most inspiring Jewish holidays is Hanukkah. It's the festival of light. It shares a message of tackling the darkness and the difficulties of the world and making a difference. That's why the tradition of Hanukkah is that we light our candles facing the street so that we make an exclamation, an announcement to the world. We don't accept darkness. We don't accept the bad news. We will change. We will make an impact on the world around us. And of course, you have to have a tremendous amount of inner wherewithal in order to do that. Now, Jews don't only light candles once a year on Hanukkah. We light candles every single Friday as we go into Shabbos, into the Sabbath. And those candles bring warmth and light into our own homes. They're not at the window. They're not making a statement to the world. They're there because we need light in our homes. Once upon a time, before electricity, you had those lights in your home. So here's an interesting dilemma. What happens if a person is going through difficult financial times and they now have to make a choice? They can only afford either the Hanukkah lights or the Shabbos lights. So which do you prioritize? Do you prioritize Hanukkah, which has this beautiful message that extends beyond the 8 days of celebration and informs the entire Jewish perspective on making a difference? Do you prioritize Hanukkah that has the message of overcoming the tough times that you're going through? Or do you prioritize the weekly, perhaps more ordinary experience of Shabbos, putting candles on your table and sitting with your family? Our sages tell us that when you have that dilemma and you only have enough money, you only have enough resources for one of the two sets of candles, then you need to invest in your Shabbos candles. Now, what does that mean? The reason we light Shabbos candles, we're told, is because of Shalom Bayit, because it's supposed to create a sense of cohesion, tranquility, and peace in our own homes. Again, before the days of electricity, it wouldn't be an enjoyable experience to sit at the elaborate Friday night dinner and not see what you're eating. So you light candles so that you can see the food and see each other and see where you're going and not hurt yourself and just have a beautiful experience as a family. So there are two energies here. The Shabbos candles, which represent the energy of the wholesomeness of your own inner circle, and the Hanukkah candles that represent the courage to take on and change the world. Sometimes we just don't have enough resources for both. And the Torah acknowledges that and wants us to acknowledge it. We're not all superheroes. We have our times when we can go out there and really make a difference. And we have our times where we need to withdraw. We need to rejuvenate. In fact, that's what Shabbos is for, every single week. Because all week long, we're out there, we are making a difference, or earning a living, or influencing, or activism, or whatever it is that we're involved in. Shabbos says, take some time for you. Replenish your personal resources. Shabbos reminds us of the importance of self-care, because you can only share with others as long as you have within yourself. If you deplete yourself, you do yourself no favors, and you do everybody else no favors. So therefore, when there's this dilemma, I don't know right now where I should put my attention, go out there and change the world, or just make sure my own family and myself are strong enough? The great minds of Judaism say, the world you'll deal with tomorrow. Let's first make sure that there is somebody left inside you who can deal with that world. Today, we're run off our feet. Even when we are at home, we're accosted consistently by social media, streams of messages, and very often we feel responsible. I need to reply. They've seen the 2 blue ticks. They know that I've watched their message or read their message. There's so much expectation. Go out there, be part of this organization, participate in that activism. It's all fine and good, as long as we ensure that we don't destroy ourselves in the process. Because at the end of the day, if we don't care for us, there won't be an us to care for the world.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard about a therapy session starting at 50 Rand? Well, the Counselling Hub is bridging the gap of not only the stigma around going to therapy, but also the obstacle of the financial strain around therapy sessions. Today we chat to some wonderful people here at the Counselling Hub to find out exactly how they're bridging those two gaps.
So there is a spectrum of mental health, just like there is for physical well-being. You know, you can break your leg and go to a doctor and get it repaired, or you can have a chronic disease that needs constant upkeep. And it's the same with mental health, except that we don't see it that way, but actually our brain and our body are one. And I think it is becoming more common to understand that when we are stressed, our body reacts. That then creates health issues that we have to deal with, and in a way that also takes care of the stress and the source of the stress in order to be well in general and to be able to cope with the stress that we're all living under now with COVID, on top of what was going on in South Africa previous to that. There's a lot of violence, abuse in the society, both random and from people that we know. And these need to be metabolized in a way that don't impact on our ability to relate to people in a way that is loving and caring. And counseling allows for that process to occur. When we have a listening ear, when we get some skills around how to communicate, how to deal with our trauma, what it is that we're experiencing, and to know that we're not alone, this then allows us to continue with our lives in a way that we cope much better and happier.
Self-care is not just about going out and being part of the commercial self-care industry, like buying nice face creams or masks. That is also a great part if you can afford it. But there are things we can do without money. Exercise, rest, drinking lots of water, reflecting, journaling, reflecting on areas that you feel you might have not done your best. How can you change that? Stop calling yourself names. Stop saying, I'm stupid, I'm never going to get through this. Sit with it, go through the feelings, and understand that you yourself, once you've got the coping mechanisms, can make your whole self come together.
I come from a very committed Jewish home, and I was brought up to understand that with privilege comes responsibility, and that wherever we are, we should be contributing to the welfare of the country in which we live, because in their welfare lies ours. So that's always been the mantra of our home. Volunteerism has always been very strong amongst my family. So the Counselling Hub was established along with the SACAP Foundation to create a service where people can access mental health services, basic mental health services, at a donation of only 50 Rand. And we believe that with access to mental health, the well-being of the country in general is on a better footing, because once we can deal with our own emotional regulation, we have a listening ear, we then are able to relate to each other better in our own families and in our own communities.
When COVID, the first hard lockdown, literally we had to shut down face-to-face. And we immediately, within 3 days, we had all our counsellors trained in telecounselling. We had a system going, and we immediately started telecounselling services. So for that for like big, enormous parts of 220, we were just telecounselling. And got even more clients, actually. Then 2021, we started to open up when things started to open up, and we came back to the Counselling Hub. Slow, face-to-face has been coming slower There's still some of our volunteers that live with grandparents or whatever, or who haven't been double vaxxed, that won't come in, and so they're still doing telecounselling. We have seen in over 2.5 years over 2,000, I don't know, maybe 400, 500 people we have counselled. I'd say predominantly successfully, because we do feedback forms and our feedback has been fantastic. There are things which we always need to improve on. We're still young. We've brought in lots more money than when we started. We employ a part-time fundraiser, and so we're really hoping this year, 2022, that we can start our national telecounselling service.
Well, anybody who's tried to access counselling in South Africa knows that a private system charges from between $600 to $1,200 per session. And that is very expensive for most people, especially as it's not a one-stop shop. You have to go consistently for a few months to get results. So we created a situation where we get donations from a number of foundations, and we are then able to sponsor our clients. And we ask for a donation of 50 Rand a session. We also have a volunteer-based service so that we keep our prices low. But, you know, this depends on the goodwill and the educational opportunities available for it to continue. But we have been incredibly surprised at how many people would like to volunteer with our service, and we're very grateful for that.
I carry out the inductions with all new volunteers. They get interviewed first by me, and then they go through a bigger induction with a set of new volunteers, and we go through the policies, the protocols, how they need to fill in their case notes, what is appropriate for the first session, etc., etc. So that's like a 2-hour training. Then they have to learn the diary system and attend at least one debriefing a week for their hour management. We're also now getting interns from overseas who are doing their masters and who've applied, and that has been so successful. So
the government has established counsellors as a stopgap between psychologists, psychiatrists, and lay counsellors. There's actually a registered counsellor degree that you can undertake. But those spaces have been created in the public system, but they haven't been filled. And we really are advocating for that space because there are a lot of people who can really benefit from counselling. And I believe that we can all benefit from counselling at some point in our lives. We go through different phases and have different challenges that we need to be able to reflect on. And most of us don't have skills to do so at different points in our lives. And this is not a failing. This is part of the human condition. We learn and we love, and we need to connect with each other to grow. So we should see counselling as a way to connect with somebody who's non-judgmental, who can help us think better about our lives and feel better in our lives. Because when we feel better, we can be better, and we spread that in the world around us. I would say our Derech Erezt is to create equal access to mental health support and advocacy for mental health.
Mishan is a young medical intern based at a hospital here in South Africa. She realized that there was a gap when it came to the concept of self-care amongst her colleagues and the medical community at large. So she decided to do something about it.
So in Judaism, there's a beautiful concept about every person is a world. And for me, that resonated. When I was really younger, I was like, I want to save the world. I want to join Generation Earth. I want to fix the world. And I think as I got a little bit older, that specific idea of Judaism about fixing a person as a world has really become very central to me. And it definitely was a big driver in saying, okay, yeah, I don't need to fix the whole world. If I can fix some people's lives, that's their worlds on their own. And I think Judaism's also, it deals a lot, and maybe it's a cultural thing more than only the religious aspect of doing. Very active community, very much about helping one another within the community. And I think that's something you take with you, and definitely made me want to be more active in the roles of my patients, in their lives, in the communities in which I serve. So trying to just get involved in that aspect. Since I was 10, all I ever wanted to do was become a doctor. And I think if you speak to many young doctors, they'll tell you pretty much the same story. And this was an amazing opportunity. We got to see people get into medicine. So they had literally spent years trying to get to this point. Unfortunately, medical school is very tough and very grueling. It's very intense, like all or nothing exams every 5 weeks. If you're sick, you fail. There's no second chances. There's just an immense amount of pressure. And at times, although not probably meant, it's almost like a bit inhumane, the expectations. So already in about 5th year, I started to realize there's a problem, because these people are living their dream and everyone's really miserable, which, is not what we want. Then, fortunately, I started my internship in January 2020. No one had even heard of COVID, basically. And already it was a very nerve-wracking time. I know, at least for myself, we'd interacted with the people the year above us who had started internship the year before. And, you're always speaking to people, and it's a tough time. It's a lot of responsibility, very long hours, not always as much support as you need. Quite overwhelming emotionally, and a lot of people found it a very mentally, like from a mental health point of view, very challenging. Then we got hit with COVID, and everything everyone thought made internship rough just got way worse. And I think it was a very tough time. The seniors couldn't help us because they were lost. They were scared themselves. They didn't know more about COVID than we did. And it was a really hard time, and really and truly, the general mental health of most junior doctors, I think most healthcare workers in general, really, really struggled. And it was at this time I really discovered a lot of really amazing, like Buffalo podcasts and books, dealing a lot with resilience, a lot about happiness, a lot about the science behind all of this. And I was like, why did no one teach this to us? It's not just COVID, and it's not just in South Africa. There's certain things about healthcare work you cannot take out. You cannot take out the stress of life and death situations. You can't take out the stress of having to tell people bad news. You can't take away the burden of trying to send a patient to hospital and they burst into tears because they don't have money for the taxi. So there's a lot that maybe came down to situational, like COVID, and then there's a lot that isn't. That's just part of the job. And I really started to feel that for 6 years we spent at least 9 hours a day at university, if not more. And no one had ever spent time on us, how we can be better healthcare providers. And obviously it's about knowledge and skill, but it's about empathy, it's about compassion, it's about bedside manner. And that's the first to go when people are very emotionally burnt out, when people are struggling on a personal level. They have nothing to give, and it drives kind of that very robotic way of dealing with patients. It drives what's the physician burnout rates we're seeing, suicide rates we're seeing, and it's becoming a very silent pandemic. So there's definitely not one solution to this problem, but I felt I could try and offer something. So a friend of mine who is a trauma counselor and I started a podcast where I interview her a lot because she's just a wealth of amazing knowledge. We've had somebody who started something called Happy Schools, which deals with social emotional learning, which is literally EQ, coping skills. And the other side is we post, we have Instagram, we have Facebook, and it's about promoting the health and wellness of healthcare workers. But also that, more and more, I think patients come to doctors, healthcare workers, to be healthy. And healthy does not mean less sick. So more and more, we want our doctors and our dietitians and everything to tell us how to be healthier, and that's not what we're being taught. So we definitely need to fill in those gaps in our own wellness and our patients' wellness, and that's really our aim at Wellness Works, and it's something I really hope to one day be able to incorporate into med schools. I don't believe that it's necessary that we're still teaching everything the same way it's been taught for 100 years. Everything about who does medicine, the face of it, the expectations has changed, and it would be really amazing if we could get a little bit more of that university backing on how we can change that as well. So I've definitely learned a lot for myself about how to cope with my own stress, my own emotions, how to debrief and ask for help. I've definitely realized this is such a big problem that as a generation we are fighting. We are definitely, as a generation across other fields, also trying to argue that we want things to be a little bit better. We don't want it to be as horrible as it was. And it's definitely also made me feel a bit more that we have a voice, because very often in medicine is a massive hierarchy. And although theoretically it's a pyramid, the ones at the bottom and the most juniors get very kind of like pushed under the rug. And I think it's also been nice to feel that we have a voice and somewhere to express our concerns, even if it's just amongst each other, so that they're not just like squelched and we're left feeling alone. I think my Derech Erezt as a young Jewish doctor is to give as much as I can to my patients. Very often you may not know the most, and you may not even have all the resources available that you need to treat them. But just, giving them somewhere to speak and actually listening and being kind has a lot of healing to it as well. And then I think our Derech Erezt for Wellness Works will be to grow it and to just try and stay true to the idea and to not lose hope, to try not become too senior to remember what it was like to be junior. So to just try and create something that is organic and grows in itself. It shouldn't be dependent on just one or two people, but to really just continue to push the idea that we can create a better system and we can create a different world for the doctors coming into it.
Well, we've come to the end of the show for this week's episode of Derech Erezt. As always, we'd love to hear from you, so please send us a Facebook message at Derech Erezt Connect. From me, Lauren Joffe, and the Derech Erezt team, have a beautiful week.